Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, my cousin, Michelangelo. Michael, how we doing, man?
Um, this the sports world in Philadelphia is it's fine at the moment, It's
Yeah,
not on fire, but
you're a really lousy liar. You know that?
listen, it's been rough with the baseball team the last couple
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah, and I think we'll talk about the baseball club later on in the show, along with the Eagles OTA news. A lot of concerns, early concerns,
Hmm.
because it's June. We're not gonna, we can't look into the future when it comes to players' health, but some things coming out of camp that Vic Fangio said that was a bit concerning.
Hmm.
And we also are going to do our quarterback rankings for 2025. Just as a disclosure, this is not how we rank guys, what they performed at last year. It's for what we think
I
they're
like
going
it
to do
loosely,
this
like obviously it's like, we're basing our predictions off the makeup and the new
like
situations.
coaching changes, new
Yeah,
acquisitions,
yeah, yeah. All that.
age. I think age is a
Sure.
factor.
Yeah, because when
Yeah,
you're
so that's going to be towards the end of the show. But let's go with some breaking news.
Mhm.
So it was announced this morning that and I don't know if this is going to stay because this might go to court, which this is fantastic. The school and college sports schools have to now all directly pay their athletes. In other words, boosters and donors can't go and donate, say, $5 million to have Arch Manning play quarterback for the University of Texas anymore. They have to
Yeah,
be paid directly from the school. And there is now a salary cap of $20.5 million.
John,
Each
you hear what you just said? Salary cap. Is
salary
there
cap.
is that what it's supposed to be with college sports? There's salary caps?
Well, hey, as a St. Joe's alumni, Michael, they
I
may
am an alumni.
qualify for getting money from when they institute the luxury tax. So maybe
Is
you could
that who
get some,
gets the money?
maybe you could
Alumni?
maybe you could get no, I mean, like, no, you're gonna be getting like you'll be getting some more 4-star recruits potentially over at St. Joe's for hoops.
Listen, they're knocking. They want my money. They want some donations to the NIL pool for from their alumni. So they want me to help pay for the next Final Four run of the St. Joe Hawks.
Maybe the St. Joe Hawks should worry about just getting into the damn tournament before we talk about
Ah, what a
asking
shame.
for money. I know.
Not to go off on a tangent, what a disaster that the 2024-2025 St. Joe Hawks did not make the NCAA tournament with the amount of talent that they had. But I digress. Yeah, college sports is heading down a very, very the slipperiest of slopes that and we might have already fallen. The plot has been lost in what, the NIL was supposed to be. Like John said pre-show, we're kind of seeing how the sausage is made, and it's it's definitely ugly. And I think the NCAA does a really good job at framing what's going on to like negatively reflect more so on the players and making the general population think the players are being greedy or whatever, as opposed to you like, you know, the schools actually just being greedy by trying to get as many good
There's
players as they
only
can
two
and stuff.
guys that I could recall that made headlines for, I would say, being greedy.
Hmm.
Well, one was being greedy because of his father. The
Sure.
other apparently just wasn't getting paid. I'm talking about Cam Rising and Nico Iamalavia.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I'm sure there are cases, but for the most part, it's like, how can I get on the back of a 18 to 22-year-old that's getting offered hundreds of thousands of dollars to play college football or any college sport for that matter. It's like, yeah, let me get mad at the 19-year-old who maybe didn't grow up with a lot and like is being offered 250 grand to go transfer to a different school. Like to me, that feels a bit insane to like get on the college kid for that and be like, hey, maybe like we can make the system a little bit better. So if they do get paid from the schools like that, we're not calling it NIL and we have its own thing or whatever. And NIL, like the original roots of it was supposed to be was, oh, I can have my last name on the back of a jersey that's sold at the team store, and guess what? I get a check of that. Or I can go sit down and sign autographs on cards and other memorabilia and stuff, and I can make money off that legally. I can have a YouTube channel or a TikTok on the side, and I can make money off that. I can appear in a local commercial and make money off it's everything. I can sponsor an energy drink or a pre-workout or whatever and just simply make money off of it as opposed to never being able to do that while you were still in college. The biggest famous example, the kicker destroying, was a kicker at University of Central Florida when they first started kind of going undefeated. He had a YouTube channel and very entertaining one at that. And the NCAA basically told him, you need to either delete the YouTube channel or you can't be a Division I kicker anymore. And he looked at it and he's like, listen, it's hard to become an NFL kicker. I think I'm just gonna stop playing college football. And look, he's got a very successful YouTube channel to this day. And that was kind of like a what are we doing here that this kid can't just have make YouTube videos, about kicking challenges and other sort of cool stuff like that because you're making money as a college athlete? Like that's ludicrous. But anyways, I digress. Enough about complaining about the NCAA. We could be here all day with that.
Yeah, I do think though, like I mentioned to you, like you just said, I said before the show, we're seeing how the sausage is made because this has been
Mhm.
going on for decades. Paying players, it was just more through. It was a little bit more nefarious how they would
Yeah, it's
like
the mysterious
compensate
bag
them,
of money on the doorstep.
or what caught what Reggie Bush couldn't have his Heisman Trophy for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like Pete Carroll bought his mom a house, where
Mhm.
where USC bought like someone because yeah,
Remember James Wiseman got in trouble because Memphis was gonna pay for his girlfriend to fly out to the NCAA tournament or whatever, pay for, like, his girlfriend and family, and then he got in trouble for that and was suspended for a year or something. Like, it's that sort of crap?
right. I do think though with this salary cap, which you said it's now it feels like it's professional sports. They're trying to crack down. I think what the NCAA is trying to do is they're hoping they want to restore balance. They saw the NCAA tournament and how there
Mhm.
was no upsets. And like, which school was it, Michael, where there was all portal guys from like mid-major schools, like basically
It was a lot of the Final Four. It was
Like Auburn, Florida.
Auburn was the big one where I think they had, like, on the entire, like, 10-man rotation or whatever, or 8-man that actually plays. It was, like, only 2 of them originally committed to Auburn, you know? The team with actually one of the least was, like, Duke, but it's because Duke just gets the big recruits, but Kentucky was a big one, had a bunch of recruits. Obviously, Arkansas had a bunch of, Kentucky recruits that came over with John Calipari. Um, Florida had a good mix of different players. Like, Purdue was the only team that was in the tournament for a while that had, like, everybody was from Purdue. Like, they just kinda keep their players and whatever. But, yeah, a lot of the big name SEC schools, Alabama as well, they all had transfers, a bunch of them.
That's what I think. That's the NCAA's. I think obviously worried about money is
Mhm.
they don't want college football to turn into college basketball where no one tunes in. Well, I'm being a little unfair there.
I think
Obviously,
they're gonna watch, I mean.
The NCAA tournament, men's basketball tournament draws the biggest ratings in
Yeah.
college basketball, right? I'm sure the divide between regular season games and the tournament is probably a bit substantial,
It's
right?
probably the biggest, I would say, in every sport, professional or collegiate. If I had to guess, I would say the biggest disparity in regular season viewership versus their like playoffs, it is definitely college basketball, without a doubt. I feel like that's the majority of people that don't watch a single minute of college basketball during the regular season, but it's like, oh, the tournament. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, like that. I think that's a huge faction of people.
I agree. Yes, and I don't think they want college football to turn into that. Like that, I would think that would be the fear. Now, like
Yeah.
we could say right now, oh, I'm still gonna, if on a Saturday that I'm off work, am I gonna, if I have free time, I'm gonna put on college football, even if I'm like cleaning my house, or
Hmm.
if I'm just like chilling or hanging out with my friends, or
Yeah.
you know,
Going out to, a bar, restaurant
my
sort of
wife
vibe,
my wife is out running errands. I'm gonna go put on college football
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, right? Well, if it's gonna be like this like huge talent disparity, the games are going to become less watchable. It's going to really kind of hurt like when they're going to renegotiate television contracts.
Yeah, it's gonna, a lot of people are gonna put those crazy bids in for the playoff games, but
Right.
I
And
don't
like,
know.
right. So we'll
They'll have to
see.
bank on their diehards, which is like, the Midwest and the Southeast of the country. Like they live and breathe for that college football. Like they'll never not watch it. So
Oh, of
that's
course.
what you're banking on mostly. People from those areas, not people from like the Northeast.
Yeah. Real quick, NBA Finals, Thunder,
Dude,
Pacers.
unbelievable. Tyrese Halliburton, I you're not it's hard to throw around, oh, clutchest player of all time for like a couple playoff runs, but it's like there's there's a knack, he's the only player to have 3 go ahead shots in the last 5 seconds of a playoff run. Um, he has 4 go ahead or tying shots in the last 5 seconds of a game. He's now 5 of 6 in his playoff career, shooting a go ahead or tying shot in the last 5 seconds, which is unbelievable, by the way. Much better numbers than Kobe, who was actually pretty bad in those situations, only shot like 20%. LeBron, good at shooting like 40% in those situations. But again, none of that is 5 of 6. That's you're up mid 80%. And like, this series is just getting started. Who's to say he doesn't have another one? Like it's ridiculous. And it's something that I think he deserves a lot of credit for because if anyone you watch game one, he wasn't having a great scoring day. It's not like he wasn't atrocious, but it
He's
wasn't.
not a volume scorer where he's going to shoot the
No,
ball 30 plus
and he
times like
is
a
when he's
Harden.
like he gets in like a state and you see that. What was it? Uh game 6 against the Knicks or game 4, whatever it was, that he had like 32 and like 18 assists on like 23 shots and no turnovers or whatever. When he's in a state, like, he'll shoot it a lot, but if he's not cooking, he's not gonna be shooting a lot, and especially down the stretch, he was missing some big shots, but, the role players stepped up to keep it close. I don't know many players that can kinda go cold at the end of a game and then still be able to just knock down the buzzer beater. Like, that's extremely impressive. There's just so many guys that they'll just defer or they just won't make it, like, it'll be not even
And I think
close.
what's really impressive of what he's doing is like you saw with the Splash Brothers, like they would just knock down those kind of shots, but there was like always like Iggy could knock down shots, like you
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Just
Like there
big
was
shots,
just
like
make shots where it does feel like it kind of reminds me a little bit of what Halliburton's doing. I don't know if this is a good comp, but they kind of remind me of the 2001 Sixers. And I know like him and Iverson have totally different games,
Yeah.
but it does feel like he's the guy who needs to have the ball in his hands in that situation. There's
There's
like no
no, yeah, yeah.
like
Like
Rick
it's
Carlisle's not like trying like like you would see like for example Doc Rivers or like the recently fired Tom Thibodeau would try to draw up plays to get like their third or fourth best player like wide open to take that shot, and they hesitate, and it just ruins the whole play where
what's
he's just not
something,
afraid.
yeah, and what's so impressive too is that Casey Wallace, the guard defender for the Thunder in that on that play, like kind of stopped the ball for a second, like made Halliburton kind of hesitate at about the logo. And usually when there's like 2 to 3 seconds left and you make the player with the ball in his hands stop that far from the basket, it's usually like you did enough defensively already. Like right there, it's enough. There's no way they're getting a decent shot. And he was able to put his head down, hit his little step back to create just enough room to get a decent look. It's really, really impressive. And man, and you mentioned Rick Carlisle, and I think Rick Carlisle is very, he's going to be in, I think, some like very, very good company in terms of coaching conversations, in terms of just what he's been able to do with rosters that maybe aren't seen as
You mean like
dominant
you mean like
as
when he beat the LeBron, D Wade,
right. Like
Bosh
in,
with just Dirk and like role players?
he built that Pistons team that won in '04. Although he wasn't the coach in '04, I think that was Larry Brown actually.
Yes.
But he was the coach prior to that kind of built that system, and then they added players in
Yeah, they added
'04 as
Rasheed
well.
Wallace.
Yeah, and like that kind of that took them over the top. Rick Carlisle, like you said, those 2011 Mavericks that went on an absurd playoff run of beating the Kobe Lakers. They beat you know, the Spurs in like the midst of their second era of a dynasty, and then they beat it was the Durant Westbrook Thunder, and they won those 3 series, very difficult series. When who's your second best player on that team? It's a mix of like Jason Terry or,
Harrison
Sean
Barnes,
Marion, and like
right?
it just no, Barnes wasn't on that team yet, but it was just, obviously Dirk was incredible. But to be able to just get the most out of a team that's really just like Dirk and a bunch of solid to really good role players,
Which
to
is
then
exactly how the Pacers are.
exactly. To then go and beat the Heatles, the LeBron, Wade, Bosh Heat. Truly, it's a very, very impressive feat. And then to transform into what he's been doing with the Pacers recently. And it's, how much influence he's had on coaching too. I saw a lot of people saying this that he was kind of one of the first coaches to not call a timeout in those situations, like trusting your players, trusting the flow of, they have the instincts to make the right play. Like there's a lot of coaches that after the Shea Gilgeous missed jumper that are immediately calling timeouts. Like, all right, timeout, timeout, timeout. We have 7 seconds to draw up the game-winning play. And it's, now the defense has a chance to get set. They have a chance to sub in who they want to sub in as well. And you can be like, all right, we're not letting this. But when you get a miss and then the rebound comes and it's like we're just playing, you're scrambling a little bit. That's all these most of these Halliburton plays are off like, instinct plays like that. And he was doing that way before everybody else was doing that. And now that's kind of the norm where it's like, oh, let your players play, let them go, and let them make their decision. You don't always have to burn the timeout. And he kind of had that sort of influence on the game in that way. So shout out Rick Carlisle, man. It's been really, really a stellar coach for essentially his whole career, but is I think just now finally starting to get the full circle appreciation from,
Yeah,
everybody.
I agree with everything you said. I still think the Thunder are going to win that series just because
Probably. Like
of
they're
the
just
because they
so
have
much
so much
better.
firepower, and then
They should be so much better.
but
But
I will
team,
say this though, I could what sucks for the Pacers is like obviously if they got another elite kind of level player to pair with Halliburton, they would be the favorite next year again to win the Eastern Conference. I would assume.
but I think the way they have their team where it's like Siakam. known he rises in his level of play in the playoffs. He's done it every year. He's in there. I mean, listen, they're up 1-0 in the NBA Finals. Like, it's hard to say, like, oh, it's not enough. They need more. Like, they have a bunch of playoff risers. Andrew Nemhard, John, shot like 29% from three in the regular season, and he's shooting 44% from three in the playoffs. It's like, when you have a bunch of guys that are raising their level of play, like, it's impressive. And I think if you're the Thunder, the way you got to beat this team is you just got to blow them out. Like, you need to get up and kind of step on their throats and just hold them down because what? They were up like 7-12 essentially the entire game. Like truly the entire game, the Thunder were winning by about 7 to 12 points. And every time it got to 12, the Pacers would chip it back down to 8 or to 7, and then the Thunder would lift it back up. But it was every time the Thunder were going to make it like from 12 to like 18 to 20, the Pacers weren't letting them do it, and they just hung around, hung around, hung around, and even they were down 108 to like, or were they down like 104 to 98, something like that, with like 2.5 minutes, and Neesmith hits a corner three, and all of a sudden you're back in it. It's just like up until like 2 minutes left, it felt like the game was going to be over. This is the first time in the finals of the last 27 playoffs that a team was trailing by 7 or more points with under 3 minutes to go and won the game. Because in the finals, usually when you're up by that sort of score, you can put teams away. And the Pacers just don't die. If you're in a close game against Indiana, I think it doesn't matter if you're winning by 6 or if you're down by 6. If you're in a close game with them, I'm gonna lean to the Pacers' way every time in those sort of situations, that they're just gonna hit the big shots and get the stops when they need to, and it doesn't matter who they're playing against. They're playing against the best team in the league, and by a wide margin, and it just does not matter.
Kind of just so let's just shift gears to hockey, and then we'll get into baseball and then football.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stanley Cup Finals last night, double overtime thriller. Panthers won.
Both games have been great.
Both games have been great. I mean, this is if you want to sell the NHL to new fans.
2 overtime games in the first 2 games of Stanley Cup. Both teams split.
I would say
it's pretty good, man.
Pretty good. I mean, the
Yeah.
NHL product right now, I think, is really good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, their presentation is the worst of the 4 major sports by.
Yeah, and NBA's presentation has fallen off a cliff, but I never realized how much. I guess I realized in the last few years, but it's like a voice has never done so much for a sport the way that Mike Emmerich's voice did for the NHL and like big NHL games and the Stanley Cup and stuff. Like, all the other sports, you can imagine big moments with other announcers, and it's like in hockey, besides Gary Thorne in, that 90s era, Mike Emmerich is just the voice of every massive moment that has occurred in like NHL playoffs and Stanley Cup lore from, as my entire life essentially up until 2020. And I don't think you don't know what you had until it's gone, that sort of saying. And even though I actually think Kenny Albert's a pretty good NHL announcer, it's just nothing compared to Mike Emmerich, who makes every puck thrown toward the net feel like it has a good chance to go in. And guess what? Because that's sort of the nature of hockey, especially in the playoffs, is sometimes just throwing crap at the net and it redirects in somehow. And I think a lot of the announcers, especially Sean McDonough on ESPN as ESPN's top guy, I think a lot of announcers kind of miss that sort of mark. They don't really have that sort of excitement that they bring to the game. And just imagining what Mike Emmerich's call would have been on the game-tying goal with 17 seconds left in the third period, I think he would have been going bananas, and it would have made that moment as iconic as anything. And that is honestly the biggest thing. You could handpick a bunch of highlights from like 2008 until like 2000. like 18, and Mike Emmerich is going to be on the call, and it's going to make the moment feel like one of the biggest top 10 NHL moments in the history of the sport. And I feel like this Corey Perry tying goal, even though the Oilers didn't win, like that's a moment that's like, oh, that's so iconic, whatever. But it's just not going to be. And I think a lot of it has to do is when you go back and watch the highlights, it's not going to be Mike Emmerich making it seem like it was so great. It's going to be Kenny Albert, who had a nice call, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, I will say, kind of going back to the actual series itself, I think it's going to go 7 games. I think I'm going to feel pretty bad for McDavid if they don't win this series, because I do think if you look at his playoff stats, there's an argument to be made. Even though he's still active, he could be the greatest athlete of the four major sports when you factor in their playoff performances and like statistics to not have a championship. And
McDavid, that is.
McDavid, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get it, sure. Yeah,
Like
I
I've
think he'd
seen, like I've
easily.
seen, like Ovechkin literally play like crap in the playoffs, and they would get bounced in 5 games. And people were when he broke the goal record, people were talking about him like, oh, should he be in the same conversation when people talk about the greatest hockey players as Gretzky? And then you
Like, you
think
can no, like, you
like
could say
like
Ovechkin's the
no,
greatest goal scorer ever. Sure, he's got the most
yeah,
goals,
because he's got the most goals, but at the
but
same
it's
time,
like,
you know,
is he up there and, like, those yeah, of course he is, but he's not he's not better than Crosby, you know
he's
what I'm
not the best
saying? Like,
player
it's
in his era.
no, exactly, and Ovechkin was incredible, but I just think, there's levels to it a bit, and McDavid has been incredible and always performs in the playoffs, and he's just finally had decent enough supporting cast to kinda get here where he, like, kinda backpacks it. I mean, when you look at, like, odds of things and you see, like, oh, McDavid's minus 600 to get a point in this game, and it's like, that's absurd. Like, you're just guaranteeing that he's going to create a goal at some point during the game. Like, guarantee. You know how hard it is to be a guarantee to do that in the playoffs? Like, the highest odds on, like, the Panthers will be, like, minus 200, and it's like, "Okay, 600, John? That's absurd." But anyways, the Flyers have been a bit active and perhaps will be more in the near future. They signed a couple extensions, as well as very heavily rumored to sign another Russian player. But first, the extensions. Tyson Forrester got that bridge contract, 2 years, 7.5 million, which is 3.75 a year. Very classic bridge contract between your ELC and then what you're like after your restricted free agent status. It's essentially like it's kind of like arbitration for for the NHL being like a restricted free agent. It's pretty similar in that regard. But I think I would have liked to have signed Forrester to a longer term deal and just kind of buy it out. I do believe in him as a future piece of this team. I think he's excellent defensively, one of the best defensive forwards in the entire sport, and I think offensively, his ceiling can be a lot higher if you do put him with great players. We saw what he was able to do in terms of creating a lot of chances when he was playing with someone like Nathan McKinnon in the Men's World Cup. And granted, Nathan McKinnon is one of the best players in the league, but point is if you put him alongside some really elite offensive players, you can see that ceiling jump. And I do think that there is a pretty solid offensive player in there as well. So I'm pretty high on Forster. Happy they were able to do something
Well,
with
I
it.
mean, if you
With
saw
that
the
contract looks
the
like in a
the
couple of years.
was it the Worlds was the tournament after that was going
Yeah, the
on?
World Cup. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah,
it's
the
like the
World
hockey World Cup
Yeah, the
basically.
Hockey World Cup where McKinnon's just feeding him amazing passes, just burying him. Like
Yeah.
if Tyson Forster's definitely the type of player where the Flyers added a legit center, he's an easy shoe in for 30 goals.
Yeah, and it could definitely be
You saw how well he played after Torts left, where Torts was having him play
just defense first, and
like
it's
defense first. And I think with Rick Tocchet, sorry, you know, good comp for Tyson Forster does play a lot like Rick Tocchet.
Yeah.
It's actually kind
So
of funny. So
we
he's probably
will
going to be like
we'll
Rick
see.
Tocchet's favorite player on the like one of his favorite go-to guys.
Yeah.
So that's very good for Tyson Forster. Now, what's the
They
so the
also
Flyers
made
also made
they
another
also
act potential. It's not
well,
official.
hold on, before we gotta get to Noah Cates, they also extended Noah Cates, um, 4 years, 4 million a year, which when you look at like across the league, what third line centers are making, it's actually they probably actually saved a little bit of money. I thought it was a little high, and then I kind of looked around. I was like, okay, this is actually pretty
Sam
normal.
Ben's going to get double the amount of that to do the
Right.
same thing.
And yeah, to be very similar. So um listen, Noah Cates is a good player. He's just a third line center, and the Flyers tend to
Yeah,
have an
Noah
abundance of
Cates is
those.
the new Scotty Lawton.
Yeah, the Flyers have a lot of third line centers currently, and
Maybe
that's not good.
maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs will trade you a first round pick for Noah Cates next year. Who
Yeah,
knows?
we'll see. But yeah, they made a signing. Well, rumored to have made a signing. Russia media put out that he's going over there to the
The ever
Flyers.
so reliable Russian
The
media.
Flyers don't usually announce things until pen on paper. Like when all
Right.
the rumors were that Michkov is coming, and then
That
it
was like for
didn't come
2
out
months
until he was like here. He
on
just
the
appeared
plane.
all of a sudden. Yeah. So I think the Flyers are in the midst of like doing that as we speak. But anyways, Maxim Shabanov is a smaller forward. He had
He's
third
listed
most
on
points.
eliteprospects.com, hockey site. He's listed as a right winger and a center, which I imagine because of his lack of size, he's probably going to be a winger as opposed to a center.
Hopefully, maybe they'll try him at center first. But yeah, third most points in the KHL. You look at some of his highlights, he's very, very silky smooth. He's got very clean hands. Put certainly some highlight reel type of goals that he scores pretty often. There's similar highlights to like when we were watching Michkov. Obviously, Michkov is just so much better, but there's similarities where it's like, you're watching him score the Michigan lacrosse goals and breakaways with fancy dekes and grabbing the puck at a midair to, create a rush the other way, and just, very, very impressive, skilled plays that, the Flyers need skill. They need offensive skill. And I think a big reason on
No argument there.
why he chose the Flyers is because of Matt Michkov. So, if the Flyers can
Well,
become a little Russian pipeline where you're getting some
so
players, I'll
the
take it.
rumors were the Penguins, Islanders, and Lightning were involved in bringing him over to the United States. And but to your point, obviously having Michkov on the team most certainly would help. But like, there's a bunch of Russians on the Lightning, but I think it's has to do with
Has
playing
to do
time.
with age. It has to do with age too. Like Kucherov is in his 30s. Malkin's pretty close to retiring. Michkov, he's 21 years old, 22 years old. Like it's going to be, they have a future playing together, like for an extended period of time, not just a couple years here or there.
The thing is, we look at the Flyers right now. The biggest issue is their just lack of like top six centers,
Hmm.
and I think this is going to be. I think we're going to see some trades from the Flyers
I
because I'm
hope
not
so.
because if you look at their forward situation as well, like you got some. I mean, Bobby Brink might get moved,
Hmm.
and you got a bunch of forwards that are in Lehigh Valley, or the guys are gonna have to they're gonna have to move guys up to open up space because they have to make decisions. And listen, with the salary cap going up, you know, it's not the Flyers have like no, it's weird. Like what you said, tell everybody what you said to me before the show.
In terms of like competing, like
Well, no,
they're
with the Flyers talent allocation.
yeah, like they have a bottom six that I think could be competitive. If you take the Flyers bottom six and put it with any of these playoff teams that exist already, I don't think you're seeing much of a decline or anything. Like, I think their bottom six is capable to compete at a very high level in the playoffs and stuff because you just have a bunch of guys that are solid when they're out there. But the difference and the issue is that they don't have more than like two or three top six guys on the roster even. So you got to move up some of the bottom six guys to play in the top six, or if your bottom six is cooking, teams can put their best defenders against them because your top six isn't really all that threatening, all that sort of stuff. You just need some higher level, higher end talent to put on the roster because I think they've done a great job at building a foundation of like role players and depth to where you just kind of need that high end talent to kind of put you over the top, I guess would be the best way to put it. It's like you built yourself like a window where it's like, okay, all we need is to fill in, all we need to do is just acquire the top end talent, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through trade, whether it's free agency, whatever, to pair it along with Michkov, to pair it along with Konechny, even Couturier, if he's paired with some good wingers, can still be a very effective player because you have all the gaps filled in. You know what I'm saying? You look at teams and they'll say like, oh, we have the stars, but we just gotta fill in the gaps of the rest of the roster. So when these couple guys aren't on the ice, it's not totally just a disaster for us. And the Flyers have like the opposite, where it's like we don't have those couple of guys or handful of guys to take over games or whatever. We have a few players, but we don't have a couple lines that, you know, you look at a team like the Oilers when it's like, oh, if the McDavid line and the Draisaitl lines aren't out there, for the longest time, it was always if those two guys aren't out there, the rest of the players that are on the ice are just so not good enough that it doesn't matter how much they produce when they're on the ice because the other guys can't do anything for you. The Flyers have the opposite of that. They don't have a dominant line at the top or a dominant second line at the top. They just have some very good third and fourth lines. Like guy like Ryan Paling, for example, as a fourth liner is very good. He has skill. He can make plays with his hands. He can play pretty good defensively. Like it's exactly what you want out of the modern day fourth liner. And you know, you just need some first liners and some second liners a little bit more. So
Right, and I think we're gonna. See, I think we're gonna see the Flyers add a top six forward. I think via trade. I don't think they're gonna go out and sign a Mitch Marner, but
sigh.
Michael, a lot of these teams that are that failed to make the Stanley Cup, like the Dallas Stars, have cap issues and they want to make moves, and I don't think they all want draft picks in return. I think they want some guys that could play at the NHL level too.
Yeah,
So
there are names that maybe they're not fully available, but they can be made available if you offer the right stuff. And I think it's worth it on the Flyers' perspective to try to push for that higher end talent. So we'll see
speaking
what they do.
speaking of young prospects, let's transition over to the baseball team that we alluded to earlier. So, Michael, when you're in Major League Baseball, it's a 162 game season. You're going to have some highs and you're going to have some lows. And the
Mhm.
Phillies right now are definitely in one of those lows. So, Jesus Luzardo might be having the most inconsistent season I've ever seen a Major League Baseball pitcher ever have. Up until last week or this past week, looked like an all-star,
I mean, he was a Cy Young candidate,
Cy Young
and
candidate, and now he's allowed 20 earned runs in less than 6 innings combined in his last two starts. Probably was tipping his pitches, and I don't want to say if he stopped tipping his pitches, he won't allow if he gave up 20 runs because he tipped his pitches. I mean, This is the
Well,
second acquisition of the Phillies. This is between him and Romano, Michael. A lot of pitch tipping coming from our new pitchers.
yeah, so I do think it is tipping. 'Cause it's not like it's dead arm. His stuff, he still was throwing like 97. It's not like he was all of a sudden throwing 92. His sliders and sweepers still had some great bite to it. They just were kind of Blue Jays were just spitting on it. I think they had some sort of tell because even when the Phillies started bringing in like schlubs to pitch after him, all of a sudden the Blue Jays lineup wasn't pissing all over everything and hitting rockets. Like, you know, the Brewers outing that Luzardo had that was bad. A lot of it wasn't like smoked. It was a lot of just like singles. And they gave up a couple, the homers, whatever,
Bombed.
but it took some time. It was like a slow chipping of the wood and then a big, the whole thing fell over. Where the Blue Jays outing, the first thing was great, and then everything else was just like rock. Like everything was just getting smoked. And it was like, okay, when everything is getting smoked like that, usually it's a sign of them knowing what's coming. And then when they start bringing in, Max Lazar and all the other bullpen guys just to finish the game, and all of a sudden they can't smoke the ball anymore. Well, to me, maybe I'm thinking, okay, they clearly had something on Luzardo. But granted, to give up 20 runs in under 6 innings is not good. That's a season killer in terms of like statistics and whatnot. I do think he'll be like fine. I refuse to believe that all of a sudden he's just going to be like unusable. I just think hopefully sooner rather than later they're gonna find out what's going on. Like he's gonna, we you sent me the video of him talking about back in like 2019 or whatever with the Marlins talking about a time he felt he was tipping and they had to look for something and found it. And I think that um, they're going to be doing the same thing here, talking to Caleb Cotham, talking to other pitching guys, and being like, all right, what's something that we're seeing? This is a fastball. Do we see something here? This is a sweeper. Do we see something here? And, hopefully they find something because I do still think it's a great pitcher
Well,
in
I do
there.
think in this. I think in this era of all like having iPads in the dugout and you know video, like everyone's out studying film like it's football, and
You pick up on these things a lot easier. You
I think
definitely
it's picked
do.
up a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I think especially now, you just gotta. I think for pitchers, you just gotta be way. I think
And be
the pitch. I
consistent.
think I think the pitch clock is definitely affecting it because now, like you don't have that time to compose yourself. So even if you are tipping pitches, like mound visit, catcher, catcher goes. Man, every time I'm calling, we're calling for a fastball, you're kind of giving away there, man. You gotta stop. And you're like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, cool. I'll just compose myself. You don't have that, and that's not there anymore. And look, it's
I
it's
mean,
a
I don't know. I think everyone's adjusted at this point to the clock. I think there's some things like that,
right,
sure,
but
that could help,
but do you understand my point though? Like
yeah. You
like
can't like when pitchers were having an issue tipping or sign stealing going on, like and catchers start noticing, it's like, okay, hold on, I'm killing this right now. And we're gonna go out there and be like, listen, they got something on you. We gotta be, whatever. And you can't always, do that now, but still there's something that they gotta figure out. This isn't to say what I'm about to say isn't to say like, oh, this is foregone conclusion, but based on what we know about the roster, when the playoffs roll around, they're going to have to put 1 to 2 of their starters, whether some of the starters aren't even up yet, into the bullpen to help out because the bullpen is clearly very dire and it's just going to be hard to replenish it via the trade deadline alone. And you have enough good starters at this point to where you're not going to be using them all as starters, if you make when the playoffs come around. So if Ranger's going to be out pitching Luzardo by the time October's rolling around in terms of a starter, Luzardo could be a guy that I think could move to the bullpen and handle it. I think that it makes me think of Andrew Miller with Cleveland and that run that he had there where, failed starter, not that Luzardo's a failed starter, but a guy with starter quality stuff moving to the bullpen to where his stuff will play even better and is a super weapon that comes in the fifth inning because you're going against the meat of the order and there's two runners on and you're getting out of a big spot. As much as we've seen Ranger excel at that, I think that Luzardo could be a guy that also excels at that come the playoff time if he's not going to be able to consistently give you a good outing, and Ranger is going to be in a better spot to do that. So I think, even if he does sort of kind of have these ups and downs throughout the rest of the season, I think there's a still light at the end of the tunnel come playoff time, whether it is him as a starter or as a reliever. They're going to have to make those decisions, and it'll all depend how everyone's pitching by the time it's time to
I'm
make
not
those
worried about the
decisions.
pitching. I think it's going to resolve itself, and I also kind of think as well. I think we're going to see some of these guys the Phillies are calling up are going to emerge once they kind of handle,
Yeah,
major league hitting.
starting pitching, I'm not worried about like at all. Even um, obviously, the bullpen is a pretty
I'm
massive
kind of
concern at
worried,
the
dude.
moment.
I'm actually kind of worried about. I'm worried about the hitting because this is the
Well, I
same
was going to say we'll
issue.
get to the hitting too, but
I mean, like, listen, Jordan Romano's not a good closer.
no, he's going to have days where he looks good. He's going to have days where he looks terrible, and you're just going to have to kind of hope you get the good roll of the dice. It's very Kimberly. It's very Craig like, where that's not, it's not a fun place to be where you're putting in. You just don't know what you're going to get. Some, it just is what it is. It's so much like Craig, even down to a runner gets on, you might as well just give him second base because he's not holding anybody on. Same way with Kimbrel. So it's better suited for lower leverage situations, but until you add some more arms, he's going to be your high leverage guy, not your highest leverage. That's what Kirkering is at the moment. But even then, a guy like Orion Kirkering, as good as I do think he is, and as good as he's really been the last handful, he still hasn't allowed an earned run since Alvarado got suspended. He's allowed some inherited runners, but he hasn't allowed an earned run. He's clearly in the Jeff Hoffman role. That was always the plan, that he was going to take over the Jeff Hoffman role last year into this year, and that role was like the fireman. The starter's getting pulled because there's runners on, and here comes Orion Kirkering to save the day and get out of it the way that Jeff Hoffman was last year. The issue, I will say, is that his lack of a third pitch, or I guess even you want to call, he has three. He throws a four seamer, he throws a sinker, and he throws a sweeper. His lack of another off speed pitch, like a changeup or a splitter, I think can limit his potential in a playoff series. I did a savant deep dive on Kirkering, and the way his pitch profile it's elite. It's got elite stuff to it, but when it comes down to a 7-game playoff series and teams are gonna see him like 5 times in a week, you're just gonna kind of you know how he wants to beat you, and you can just prepare for that. And I don't know how well that stuff plays for so long. Like, even though Jeff Hoffman's had his issues, you look at a guy like Jeff Hoffman, he has a lot of ways that he can beat hitters. He can beat him with the fastball. He has the splitter. He has the curveball. He's got a slider. And he's got the cutter. Like, he's got a lot of ways to beat hitters, to attack hitters. Kirkering, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get sweepers that try to go down and in on lefties. Maybe you try to paint an outside corner every now and again, and going away from righties. And you can just kind of read out of the hand what's coming, and you make up a decision. You're like, all right, I'm not swinging at a sweeper if it's out of his hand on this side because I know it's going to sweep out of the zone, or I'll just wait because I know he's going to want to try to throw a fastball up, and I'll sit on that, or I know he's going to try to throw a sinker that comes in on my hands, and I'll sit on that. I think he needs a changeup, and I think that's something he needs to learn in the offseason that can really elevate his pitching. Adding another off speed to offset and play off really well his sweeper and his four seamer as just something that dives away from lefties. He doesn't have a pitch that dives away from lefties that he throws like at all. And I think that's something that could really be beneficial because lefties just kind of sit inside on him, and they're like, if it's outside, it's a fastball, and it's, just adjust and hit a fastball the other way. So he's only 23 years old. Like, I think he's got a long time in this league to really refine his stuff or whatever, but it's just a shame for what you need him to be now. I don't think he's equipped enough to dominate throughout an entire playoff run or even maybe an entire playoff series. And that worries me a little bit. Because that's your best guy, and it's just what it is. And on top of that, your best guys, if you want to just call them Kirkering and Strom, they're just going to have to get used so much every time there's a close game. Like every time you're up, every time it's close, you're just like, all right, Kirkering for the big spot, now Strom for a clean inning, and then we're going to cross our fingers with Romano that he's going to get us out of the ninth, and hopefully we add some more runs in between, that sort of thing. We will be seeing with the bullpen, but like you mentioned, the lineup, the offense has been an issue. They've lost 5 in a row with Bryce Harper out of the lineup as he's been dealing with elbow soreness after getting hit by a pitch. Now he's dealing with some wrist soreness. Schwarber's gone pretty cold, and when Schwarber's cold, it really makes the glaring offense issues pretty stark. Despite the fact that Trey Turner's been very hot offensively and has been very good all year offensively, if Schwarber's going to be cold in May, it's hard. It's just going to be a rough sledding offensively, and that's what it's been the last week or so.
Yeah, they're 2-7 since Bryce got drilled by Spencer Strider, and there is this. You see a lot on social media when people talk about this team. This team is not liked.
No, not anymore.
This is a
They
very
used to be loved. What a shame.
it's considered now a very unlikable team. They're very much like, I hate to say it, they're approaching Sixers levels of the highs are not very high and the lows are the lows you ever seen, because you just feel kind of the vibe of this team is when there's some sort of adversity that they just fold.
Am I breaking news? That could be nothing. Could be something. Otto Kemp and Justin Crawford are not in the Iron Pigs lineup today.
Okay.
Crawford may be banged up because he was pulled in the middle of a game that it looked like he was kind of flexing one of his legs, I think, and he did not play yesterday either. Otto Kemp feels like he's going to get the call up for Weston Wilson, probably.
Right. Exactly. I was gonna mention. So, okay.
And I'm hoping it's not like an IL thing for Bryce. That's also a decent worry.
Well, if he's banged up, like, he probably should have been put on IL. Probably when he got drilled, just to let him heal up. So I mentioned, like, sorry, I went on my thing on
go ahead. Sorry.
Team being unlikable. I think a big issue is the uninspiring at bats. And isn't it ironic, Michael, that like Trey Turner is the guy? He's like the whipping boy when he's been the most consistent player they've had all season.
Yeah, I mean, well, Trey's very easy to punch down on for sure. I do it sometimes too.
And I'm not like the big Trey Turner fan. My point being, like, I get annoyed when I see the boomers and, like, I don't know, some of these like dudes who only started watching baseball 3 years ago. They're like,
no, yeah, the
Trey
Phillies,
Turner, Trey Turner,
the
and then
Phillies fans
like Bryce
are
Harper
very
hits
annoying.
not Bryce Harper, excuse me, like Bryson Stott hits a weak ass single, and they're like, yeah, Bryson, yeah, and Bryson Stott sucks.
Yeah, no, the problem, no one actually knows what's going on, to be honest. You know, everyone's cold at the moment besides Trey, so like any name that I mention is not going to sound super inspiring, but it's like since Marsh has come back from the IL, he's got like a 950 OPS. Granted, he's having a very uncharacteristically bad defensive year, not even like bad, but people are like, how is he in the lineup over Rojas? And they're showing like their full season stats. And it's like, I get it. That's what you're seeing. But Jesus, like, can we look at like the pre-IL and post-IL stint where it's like, yeah, the stats are going to look similar because Marsh was hitting like 150 before he got put on the injured list and since then he's hitting like 290. And it's like, I think we need to relax. Like Rojas, since Marsh came back from the IL, has been atrocious, offensively, that is. And I just think a lot of people a lot of people are frustrated, a lot of people are angry, and I get it, but I just think a lot of it is misguided. A lot of it is not earnestly being put out there. And I think it just makes me um it just makes me frustrated when I'm like thinking of like Phillies discourse and Phillies whatever because I have to remove myself from like the mass conversations, honestly. Like I'm gonna have my opinions on the Phillies and my frustrations or whatever, and I'm not gonna read what majority of the people are saying because a lot of it is just totally off base and totally like incorrect,
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Let me there's I mean we're about a month away from the All-Star game. So this is the time of year where teams are fielding phone calls for players, not making
Mm-hmm.
moves, but they're clearly
Are putting things together,
there's clearly a lot of schlock teams in baseball right now that
Yeah,
are going to be sellers.
yeah.
So we kind of chatted about this where I brought up this idea
Mm-hmm.
that I've gotten like heat for, not because it's a bad idea, but they're like, oh, but the Phillies paid all this money to Trey Turner about this. They paid him to be a shortstop, and
Mm-hmm.
I
John, funny you say this, because I was texting my buddy last night and I was like, we're maybe about a year out or 2 years out before we get the tweet that says, the Phillies are paying a combined $630 million to Bryce Harper and Trey Turner, and neither of which are playing like to play right field and shortstop, and neither of which are playing the positions that they were originally like that sort of stuff. And it's like,
that's so
guys,
who cares?
like I get
Who
it. Trey Turner being
cares?
a garbage shortstop is very frustrating and it's not good for the team. But you know what? You don't have an option right now. You don't have another option. You're not moving him to the outfield this season. I'm sorry. Anyone that wants that to like
I'm not
it would
saying.
have to be so dire to do that. If you want to do that, they'll probably do it in the off season. Maybe
Well,
the
no.
next off season. Like
Hold
it's
on.
just
Time out. Time out.
they are,
So
man. They're doing it soon.
it's
They're not
happening
they're
soon. No, it is happening soon.
yeah.
So let me.
Like the
This is what
Phillies
I
aren't
mentioned.
stupid. I'm sorry.
Well,
They're
no, this
just
is what I
not. Like
mentioned, and this is what this is what Dombrowski likes to do at the deadline. He is a dumpster diver, and by that
Mhm.
I mean they really don't go out and get the big name. But if there's a player available that they could acquire and not give up a lot, they got make the move.
yeah, like
Here's
I think they're getting Chapman,
that
Aroldis, that
makes
is.
the most sense.
That's just and he's probably somewhere between Strom and Romano.
Here's so the, I'm going to give you a name of a player who I think they may acquire, and if they were to move, because look, they moved Bryce to first because they had to do it. They
Yeah.
had to do it. If Trey Turner got moved to center field
Or left.
or left, that would solve a lot of issues because he's actually a better defensive player in the outfield than he is at shortstop.
Yeah, it's one of those guys, like we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of shortstops get moved to the outfield. Shortstops that can't hang that move to the outfield. O'Neal Cruz, Fernando Tatis, Javier Baez, and guys like Fernando and Baez have actually been like plus defenders in the outfield. Would you believe? Trey Turner. when he first came up a long time ago, was playing center field for the Nationals, and damn it, dude, was pretty good at it. Like he's, the warmonger on Twitter tweets about like catch probabilities all the time. He's like he's one of the few players in Major League history that have ever made a catch with a 5% catch probability. And it's like that's awesome. Like if I can get a guy like that, and like Rojas has those moments too, but
He's so
obviously
wildly
the bat doesn't
inconsistent.
come, yeah, the bat doesn't come with it too. And it's like a guy like Trey, he's still really fast. The speed hasn't taken a hit yet. And I'll trust his instincts to be able to just kind of to roam around out there and go make plays. And like the arm strength has never been an issue at shortstop. It's been more so the arm accuracy. But when you just kind of got to sling it,
Wouldn't
you're
it be
not thinking
nice
as
for Trey
much.
Turner? He goes out and he fields his position well, and then he's up and he's feeling good. Like, I made a really good play in the gap there, and then come up to bat, hit a double versus him booting ground balls. He's got to come up to the next plate. And now he's got to have the mentality of, oh, man, I made a really bad error. Now I'm going to press at the plate, right?
God, he's been the worst defensive shortstop in baseball by like a lot since he's gotten here. He already wasn't a great one, but
Yeah,
he's gotten
because
so
when
much
he was on the
worse.
Dodgers and even the Nationals, they would kind of fugazi make him play second base.
Well, it's just like he was just better there. Like, I don't know, he was younger and he was just better. And he's just got somehow exponentially worse. And
Can I throw a name out there that
okay, go
can
ahead.
play shortstop? He can play multiple positions, which is what the Phillies like. They like guys that can play more than one position.
Oh
Can I give
boy.
you a name that
What do
won't
you got?
cost you a lot? How about Isaiah Kiner Falefa?
IKF, huh? How's he looking this year?
So according to Baseball Reference, in
300. Oh, sorry.
1.5 WAR, 303 batting average. Let's see his defense.
All right, I'm gonna hit his savant and see what we're looking at. You know, his defense is not great. His range
Well,
is pretty poor. Granted, the defense is whatever. This is an
also on
interesting
like
name.
he's also like on the baseball equivalent to uh
Oh,
like
I gotcha. I think that
hell.
I think that the Phillies could be interesting. This is a sort of move the Phillies could make for sure. I could see that. Um, that'll be interesting to keep an
If
eye
Trey
on.
Turner was a center fielder with what he's being paid and he gets you a 6 WAR with like good defense and good base running, good hitting, wouldn't that more justify the contract versus playing him at his old position? He's getting older. Shortstops do not age well. That's a
No,
fact.
for sure. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. But in terms of enough about it. We're losing a little bit. Back to like the offense as a whole.
Let's talk about Otto Kemp and we'll wrap up and then get into football because this is a
Yeah.
big deal. Because
If
Otto
they
Kemp,
do call him up, I hope it's not a
no,
Bryce
he
Young
will be
thing.
called up because they don't have a choice.
Hmm.
This team. I mean, I'm starting to second guess the Bryce getting like hit, and now that they basically the team just looks like you know mentally like not checked out's not the word. They look like someone that just got punched in the mouth, and
Well,
now they
when you're not having fun, when you're doing well, because the fan base kind of bullied it out of them, all the goofy stuff. When you try to be serious all the time, when things aren't going well, it's pretty depressing. And I think that's where we're at, where things aren't going well, and they're super down about it.
I
They
mean, if
don't
this team
have
misses the playoffs, I mean, Rob Thompson's going to lose his job.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna miss the playoffs. I'd be shocked. They'd have to have, like, 3 more injuries for them to, I think, miss the playoffs. But, like, for example, if they win today and it's, like, a come from behind win or it's, like, a dominant win, I'm not saying they shouldn't be, like they should, throw the parade or whatever, but it's like I think they could be excited a little bit more than they usually are after wins. I think they're allowed to be, like, happy. I'm not saying you gotta go dump the water on every interview post-game or whatever, but I think that, like, you could just show some of that little more enjoyment, that excitement of playing baseball. They seem like even when they do good things, they're not having a ton of fun. It's like a, "Good job out there, we needed that." Like, I
Look
don't
at the
know.
Mets and Juan Soto. They'll win games, and he looks miserable.
Yeah, but look at him now. He looks happy now. He's shuffling against the Dodgers, and now he's been pretty hot the last, like, couple weeks or so, and the Mets are playing good baseball again and all that sort of, man, it's a long listen, like you said, it's a long season. It's a long grind. It's hard mentally to beat yourself up over every time something doesn't go your way, Like, when people say, "Oh, it's the game of failure." Baseball, you fail more than you succeed pretty much every time, So it's gonna be difficult to succeed if you hold the failures as such a massive, massive deal. You gotta be able to just kind of roll and flush it and go to the next one. So, we'll see. But
So football. You want to do Eagles, and then we'll do our quarterback rankings for 2025.
sure, what Eagles news do you got for us?
Well, so OTAs came out earlier this week. Some things we knew, and like we didn't really realize around draft time. We're all happy that we got Jihad Campbell first round.
Yeah.
I know it's preliminary. Not really excited about Adoree Jackson being the
Oh, Adoree Jackson?
Adoree Jackson, excuse me, being like playing over Keely Ringo. That's not.
I
I
mean, I
don't.
think that's gonna be a competition. Like, I don't think that's a guarantee that that's Jackson's spot. Like, I think they want it to be Ringo's, but if they don't feel he's ready to have it yet, I don't think like, the way they talk about Keely Ringo, they talk about him very, very highly. So, I feel like if he's not playing, it's because they really don't think he's ready yet, because everyone talks super highly on them. I'd be shocked. The Eagles what have the Eagles done over the last couple years that makes us believe that they're gonna play an inferior player just because? I don't know, like, incorrectly, you know what I'm saying? Like, they
The,
couldn't wait
the first
to
four
get
weeks of the season with Avante Maddox.
well, I mean, Cooper DeJean was hurt, like, they you didn't really have another option for it, you know what I'm saying?
He
Like,
wasn't like prepared yet because he was injured in
it
training
was
camp.
exactly. So, like, I think that, when they have the answer, they're gonna put it in there, and if they don't have access to it, you're just gonna have to deal with it until
Right.
it's around.
Well, and then we got the inside linebacker situation. So N'Kobe Dean was not expecting him to be like running around at OTAs, but he's still
Mhm.
most likely going to miss. He's got to probably going to miss some games. I mean,
I feel like he's gotta miss I would think almost like 2 months, but I don't know. The way that some of these players heal, you never know.
and then there's the first round pick, Jihad Campbell. Uh,
Mhm.
he's not going to be ready till August, which makes me believe that and they mentioned he's going to be the starter. Now, I don't know by
Is
saying
that what that I thought that too, and then I someone pointed out to me that it was like he's saying we're gonna have him start as in like begin at inside linebacker. I don't think that was like oh, he's our starting inside linebacker. It was a before we put him at edge or try him out anywhere else, we're gonna start him at inside linebacker. That's what I think he actually meant. I was confused as well because I was like, "Oh, I guess he's the starter." And then they were like, "Well, I mean, he's not even healthy by August yet, and they're already saying he's gonna be the starter." Like, I think that they just wanna see him at inside linebacker first is what that meant,
mm,
which that makes sense. I was confused, but it definitely
that's
makes
what he was
sense coming
drafted to
off an
be.
injury.
He's
Right, and
the
I just think coming off an injury, I don't think they wanna throw in, "Oh, yeah, he's definitely gonna be the starter." And then they want him to be if he can, but I think they got to see how he is first by August, like we said,
Hmm.
because that could be a lot like DeJean. If he's not ready until say mid-August, I don't need to throw him into week one just immediately. Like maybe he needs to sit for a few weeks too and get acclimated with everything the way DeJean had to do. So we'll see.
Then there is, I guess we'll go with good news. Jordan Davis loves Peloton.
Yeah, he seems, they all say best shape of his life. He seems more explosive. Um, was he good? Oh, excuse me. All that's very good. I think a big reason it was like, listen, you want that extension, you need to be in good enough shape to be on the field and pass rushing downs. And he showed flashes of that as the year went on, especially in the playoffs. He showed some flashes, and I think that he's just going to continue getting better in that regard. Who I'm really excited about is their rookie draft pick, Ty Robinson, out of Nebraska, defensive tackle. The way that Jalen Carter talked about him and the way that other players have talked about him, to me, makes me feel like we might not even feel losing Milton Williams. Combine that
That's pretty
with,
wild for a rookie, fourth round
well,
pick.
and not just him. Like it's a combination of him and like Ajomo having another, maybe taking a step up and having Jordan Davis in more pass rushing situations. And I think that I'm very excited for Ty Robinson, to be honest. Like he's a big guy that seems to be very, very quick, and he's impressing pretty much everybody that's watching him. All the reporters are like, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy is a pretty impact player this year, all that sort of stuff. So excited for him.
Yeah, I saw mentioned there's really, because it's the slowest part of the season of year for football, is the Trey Hendrickson being talked
I don't
about.
want Trey Hendrickson.
Eagles being a,
I don't want him.
yeah, because why? Because he
He's
just doesn't
not good against the run, and I don't want him. That's where I'm at, honestly. Like I think if they need something, they need a big-bodied defensive end edge player, and I think that honestly, unfortunately, maybe the guy that's out there that's probably the best fit for that and could be really good in that role for what they need is Jadeveon Clowney. So I don't know if
well, Jadeveon Clowney, Michael, in a really roundabout way, if you really go like, what was the catalyst for this run the Eagles are on? You could argue that he's certainly a very much indirect reason by doming Carson and then
not giving him a chance to play a full playoff game.
you
Yeah.
know, making Howie Roseman believe they needed a potential backup plan for Carson in case he couldn't recover.
And
Which,
thus is Jalen.
yes, yes. So hey, if you want to say, hey, Jadavion, thanks for helping us out. Would you like a job?
Ah, that's so morbid.
That's
But
really bizarre.
in terms of fit, I think it's exactly what they need. Big-bodied edge
So
player.
last thing, they asked Vic Fangio about C.J. Gardner Johnson, and he said it was a money fit. And then C.J. Gardner Johnson mentioned that when he got traded, it was due to a money thing.
That's what
And
he
now,
said. He said, "Listen, they got to pay the young guys down there. There's no ill will."
well,
And
there apparently
then
is ill will.
now there's a little bit of ill will because I don't think he liked the coach saying that. I guess, but I don't know. That's just Fangio at this point. Like that's just how he talks. He's very mundane, And I think that CJ is just a little bit of a character, and I don't know.
Little bit of a character.
Yeah, like him saying, they're saying, "Oh, it's a money thing. They just wanted to test me in their system. Was it the system? Was it my skill? Whatever." I do think, unironically, testing him in the system is funny because the guys that they got to replace him, like Makuba, is essentially like his play style and his mold is very, very similar to that of CJ Gardner-Johnson. So it's like if if CJ was good enough for it and they were like, okay, that player body type, that play style,
Well, I
that
don't
skill
think they
set.
were particularly happy with all of the red zone touchdowns being let up.
No, but it's like, you know, you still employed the top two defense in football. Like it was, even with his shortcomings, I guess you could say. So, to draft a rookie that plays a very similar style to CJ, not afraid to stick your nose in the run, on paper a bit undersized, but kind of plays above your size and experience and coverage and all that sort of stuff. Good ball skills, So
Yeah,
I do
I think
appreciate CJ always. He
I
he
appreciate, of
he
course, you
didn't drop the
appreciate what he
ball,
did. It's just
but
really,
in terms of like as a defensive back, he didn't drop the ball. He's got good hands, and it's very nice because it's rare sometimes to find D backs that actually reels in interceptions. I mean, DeJean dropped a pick in the Rams game that almost cost us the whole damn thing. So, thank God.
so he's now he's playing for, this is his fifth different team in 5 years, if you want to consider going back to Philadelphia being a different team.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're starting to see why he's having troubles staying with one team.
He's
It's
got he's got a big personality that
oh
sometimes isn't what it's needed.
well, no, I think it's more he has maturity issues. I mean,
Yeah,
he's close to 30 years old, acting like an Instagram influencer. Because I don't know if you, so when the Eagles had, so when the Eagles were down in where was the Super Bowl again? New
New
Orleans.
Orleans. Yeah,
In New Orleans. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked on that. When the Eagles were down in New Orleans, like they had him do like their video diary where he was just following everybody around, and it was kind of fun watching him like do it because it's the Eagles. And then like I saw something on social media where he has like an illegitimate child, and like his baby mama's accusing him of being abusive and not wanting to pay, and he's like retweeting it, like going back and forth, and it's just sort of like,
it's headaches that listen in the NFL especially. There's it's a league where you can have a lot of guys that are headaches, and some guys are headaches that are worth dealing with, and some guys are not worth dealing with. And not that CJ is a bad player or anything like that, but he's just not good enough to be worth the headache, I guess. And I think that's how the Eagles felt the first time around and why they didn't keep him. And I
because I saw
clearly how they
people were
felt the second
commenting
time
on it,
around.
and they're like, after he got moved, and it was like, oh well, the Eagles employ a murderer,
Yeah,
replying
which that's just like so I don't
wrong,
know,
but
that's so
like that's
categorically
but it
false. But like
right.
the thing with CJ that is legitimate, and I think this matters, and I think this is where the fans had the biggest issue with him being moved, is like he did bring that attitude and that swagger and that nastiness to the field, and the team lacked that in 2023, like a lot. And the people bring up the Niners game all the time where they totally just went in the way of the warm-up lines and
I
the
think a
Eagles kind of
lot of
stood there and took
I
it.
agree, but I also think a lot of that is when you read. Did you read about with Sean Desai that he like literally was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
No, I know. A lot of it was everybody, but it's like, CJ is a guy, even if it was Desai, CJ is a guy that I think can kind of bring that energy regardless. It doesn't matter who's coaching. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what's going on. He's going to bring it every time. And that's a very valuable thing to have if you're going to have a bunch of guys that lack it. So I'm not saying they're going to lack it this year because I do think they have a lot of guys that can bring that energy now. But if we do see an issue where the Eagles are looking a bit on the softer side, I think that there could be a bit of a correlation there. So we will be seeing though as the year progresses.
Okay. quarterback ranking time. So how should we do? Should we just share what our rankings are after that quiz? Do you want to start or should I start?
It doesn't matter. Start. Let me. I don't even. Can I even share my screen?
Yeah. Do you see where it
Oh,
says?
I can. I think I can. Google
Okay.
Chrome. Okay. Okay. Is this me or you?
I don't see it. Are you able to? Oh wait. Yep, I see it.
Okay, this is me. Okay, this is my quarterback ranking. So I'm gonna go by the columns that have it. That's already aligned, starting from bottom up. 28 to 34 there. That's my tier of like, you're just not very good. I don't really have a lot of hope for you either. You know, at the bottom, Mason Rudolph, I think, is just terrible. Tyler Shuck, I'm not very high on coming out of college for the Saints. Flacco is very, very old and washed. Then you have, I guess, these four, I would say, Jameis, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, and Russell Wilson, where I will say they're not very good. However, I think they have some juice sometimes. Like Jameis, we know definitely has some juice. Is sometimes Jameis is very, excitable, can push the ball, create plays. Justin Fields sometimes makes some big plays with his legs. Who knows? Maybe pairing him back with Garrett Wilson will unlock something, some Ohio State vibes for them. Anthony Richardson, I think it's only fair to put him down here. I'm still going to be rooting for him and hoping that that potential gets realized a bit. And then
Well, did you
Russ,
see the news about his shoulder?
yeah, that's uninspiring, I will say. And then Russ, not too much to go on here. Obviously, this quarterback ranking quiz is via the Stay Hot podcast. Good Theo Ash, as we see at the top there, with his two buddies, Blaine Kirk and Matt Sparnauer. Anyways, that next column, 19 to 27, this might be my favorite on the list. I really think I like the placement of all these guys. Michael Penix at the bottom. Um, I just feel like he didn't show me enough in his short little spurt, I guess, as the rookie last year to make me fully believe. I saw some flashes that were nice, but I saw a lot of missed throws that I felt were easily attainable. Um, then JJ McCarthy and Cam Ward are very similar in my eyes, where I am more optimistic about Cam Ward, the player, but I'm more optimistic on JJ McCarthy's situation. I think Kevin O'Connell might be able to make any quarterback look good if he did what he did with Darnold last year. You know,
So this okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So and then Tua, I'm so out on Tua at this point. He just doesn't do anything to inspire me. He doesn't do anything to move me. uh, his good plays have gotten less and less, and as it seems like Tyreek Hill is getting a little bit older, maybe, and not as effective, it just feels like the Dolphins are just on a very steady decline and are going to need a big shakeup eventually. Then I have Rodgers. Rodgers is so weird at this point to rank because even last year he looked like decent at times, but overall was just pretty uninspiring. But then again, it's the Jets, so whatever looks inspiring on the Jets. But then now he's on the Steelers, and does anything look inspiring on the Steelers either on the
If
offensive
you
side of
pull
the ball?
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, Michael, and ask them what ayahuasca was, and if you put one of the choices as a health food sold at Whole Foods, do you think they would? Do you think they know what that is,
Um,
or like a popular baby name? Like
yeah, no, they are questionable. They're
it does. I don't. I
questionable
think the
at
Rogers
best.
Pittsburgh fit. It does not a fit. Pittsburgh's such a blue collar town. They have.
They're not going to want to put up with the Rodgers
They're not like
nonsense.
the Pirates
But
are depressing. The Penguins are cooked, so all their hopes are on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And
yeah, yeah. 22 Bo Nix. Maybe a bit disrespectful, but I feel like 22 and up is when we start getting to, I just think, quarterbacks that are capable. Like 22 and up, I'm gonna put as like quarterbacks that can win something. Not like should win something, will win some, but like if everything goes right, I think they can do a job. And I think Bo Nix is the worst of the can do a job quarterbacks. We saw last year he did a job, and the Broncos were a very good team, especially led by that defense. But I think that with another year of Sean Payton and some rookie running backs and other running back acquisitions, that they might be able to, he might be
J.K.
in even a better
Dobbins
situation.
visited
Yeah,
Denver.
yeah. And then Sam Darnold going to be in Seattle this year with a depleted receiver room, which went from one of the stronger receiving rooms to one of the weaker ones. They still have JSN, obviously, but losing DK and Tyler Lockett in the same offseason is tough sledding. Although I was impressed with what Darnold did last year, and I don't think I can sit here and just solely be like, that was all Kevin O'Connell. Darnold still blows. I think that he did show a lot, and then obviously it all came crashing down. But I think that's just the Darnold way, and I think 21 is a pretty fair assessment of that. Then I have Bryce Young, who, while I was like doing this ranking in my mind, I was like, yeah, like I'm high on Bryce Young right now. I think he's going to have a nice year. And then he ended up at 20, and I'm like, I guess that's fine. I do think the Panthers they're going to be frisky. I think they're going to be a friskier team. They got some intriguing receiving options, and Bryce Young really started playing good football down the stretch last year, and I think he builds off that. Then we have Brock, where big money just went to Brock's way. Uh, I think that he's a fine quarterback. That when things are all right around him, he can look pretty dang good, and his escapability deserves a lot of credit. But I think that he's a bit inconsistent, and a lot of that comes with a poor situation around him at times. If it's not as great as it needs to be, he doesn't his rushing ability is really just kind of scrambling, extending plays. It's not like a genuine running ability, so it really hurts his floor. If he was a better runner, I think I'd put him higher up on this list. Next is Goff, one of the more accurate quarterbacks in all of football. Has like no legs, like at all, but still is able to put the ball where it needs to be. I think is going to take a step back without Ben Johnson. I think a lot of the Lions vibes are going to come down a little bit with no Ben Johnson. Um, and I feel very similarly about Baker. I think Baker might take a bit of a step back without Liam Cohen. Although the Buccaneers tend to be one of the smarter organizations in how they construct their coaching staff and offense and whatnot. And I think the receiving room is still pretty good and pretty intriguing. But with different coaching, I think that we could maybe see a bit of regression on the side of Baker. Then I have Caleb Williams, which may feel a bit high. I don't know, but I'm high on Caleb Williams for this year. I think that perhaps by the end of this season, we could see him in that column to his left, in the top 10 potentially, if Ben Johnson cooks with the Bears the way he was able to cook with the Lions the last handful of seasons. Then I have Geno, still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football. There's stats to back that up. Seattle's offensive line was pretty putrid, and their running game was inconsistent because of it. Even though they had good running backs, it was just inconsistent in that way. And I don't think the Raiders situation is like better or worse in that regard, but I do think that perhaps a rookie running back in Genty could have some juice. It's going to help build off that, but the receiving core is very uninspiring, I will say. Then I have Drake May, which that might feel a bit high in hindsight, especially because I don't know how good the Patriots offense is going to look. However, I think Drake May is very good, and I think a lot of the flashes we saw last year are going to carry over. And as a whole, the team's going to have Vrabel, who's definitely one of the better coaches out there. And I think that as a whole, with the culture and everything around it, is going to be pretty good, I think, for Drake May. And they address the offensive line in the draft and whatnot. So I think that's going to help a lot. Jordan Love at 13. Inconsistent for sure. I think his highs are pretty high. I don't think his like lows are brutal, but I just think there's a lot of average play in there. And yeah, they added receivers in the draft, and I think that definitely helps their very insecure receiving core. We talk about it all the time. They have like 3 number 2s on their on their roster, maybe a couple number 3s mixed in as well, and they're all like the mentality of a number 1, which is not a good thing to have. So we'll see. I do think that every year he has games where it's like, man, Jordan Love's, he's up there. And then some games it's like, God, this guy blows. And, it just kind of averages you out. Then I have Dak, who I think statistically is going to have a very good season this year. Again, it's a typical Dak year. He'll probably throw for like 4,000 yards and 30 something touchdowns. Lamb and George Pickens have skill sets that play very well off each other. The Cowboys have been missing a deep threat for the last few years, and George Pickens is one of the better deep threats in all of football. And, as long as Dak is healthy, he tends to just accidentally put up some of these really good numbers seasons. So I think 12 is a pretty fair assessment for him. Next, they have Kyler. As his career has gone on, people have kind of gotten lower on him, but I thought a lot of last year he looked pretty good, especially early on in the season, as that also tends to be a bit of a trend for him. Right around November is when things start to fall apart. But I think that, the Cardinals are more of an intriguing team. I think another year with Marvin Harrison, hopefully getting better, I think can do a lot of good for the Cardinals as a whole. And now maybe one of my hotter takes on this list is Trevor Lawrence at 10. T-Law has certainly struggled to live up to the hype that he had entering his NFL career. But I'm high on the Jags, man. I'm very high on the Jags this year. I think Liam Cohen and the GM are two very, very smart people. I like how that young, nerdy GM talks. He's got that like nerdy swagger to him, where like he's very, very everything he does is with conviction. Everything he does, like really believes in, and I think that can kind of bleed into the rest of your team. I think Travis Hunter is a very intriguing player, even if he's mostly a corner, which it seems like he's going to start out as mostly a corner. Um, but BTJ is incredible, and I like their running back room, even though ETN took a bit of a hit as the year went on. I still think they got some intriguing options back there. I'm high on the Jags, absolutely, and I think a lot of that's going to do with Cohen pairing with Lawrence. If Cohen can make Baker Mayfield look as good as he did, I find it very hard to believe that he can't make Trevor Lawrence look very good too. I refuse to believe that Baker is more talented and skilled than Trevor Lawrence. Um, Now the rest of the top 10 on the left there, we're gonna have Jaden Daniels at 9. Obviously a fantastic rookie season, played well in the playoffs as well. But I do expect somewhat of a sophomore slump. I think a lot of people, if they did this list, could have him as high as 5, and I think I just think that might be a little too high. Maybe I even have him too high at 9. I think he's very, very good, and I think he could have a pretty bright career ahead of him. But I do think because of his age, that he might not ascend much more. And listen, that might not matter because he is very good, but I just think we could see maybe a CJ Stroud second year out of Jaden Daniels, which was a bit of a rough one. And speaking of Stroud, I have him at 8. I think that his bad year last year was a bit overblown. And I think with a new offensive coordinator, things should get better. I do like the receiving room. Nico Collins, I think, is very, very good and is very, very good pairing with Stroud. And I think I think he has a season that reminds people what he was his rookie year this upcoming season. Then Stafford at 7, consistently one of the best quarterbacks year in and year out. Was a couple throws away from being in the conference title game last year, and has aged well. As even though he, looking at it from like a pitcher perspective, he'd be at the equivalent of throwing like 2,500 and 3,000 innings, it feels like, the amount of balls that he's thrown throughout his career, going back to his days in Detroit, and even now, he's still just slinging it, slinging it, slinging it, and he keeps putting up good numbers and leading successful teams, so there's no reason for me to doubt that this year is the fall off. Then I have Justin Herbert, still high on him. Um, I think that another year with Jim Harbaugh is gonna be good, and he's getting a lot of garbage, but I am rooting for him to at least win a playoff game at some point and maybe quiet some of the stuff because I do think that him as a person, like, he gets a lot of crap, but I feel like,
I
does
don't
that
think
man
he does.
speak? I think he does. I think a
I don't
lot of
think he
people give
does.
him. I think
Because
there's a
whenever anyone tries to attempt to criticize the almighty Herbert, I
and this
gotta
is what I
see
mean.
I gotta see their 14-year-old stupid ass fans with like
Yeah.
anon pictures going, ugh, ring culture is ruining the NFL discourse.
Yeah,
Like
I think that
just
there's
listen, Justin Herbert, I feel like every time the Chargers play a team with a winning record, Justin Herbert, when he has to have a game winning drive, just falls apart. Like he's expected to execute a game winning drive, and we'll talk about it when I show my list. But
yeah, I
my
think
point,
that,
the idea, like, is he of all the quarterbacks on this list in terms of technical ability of executing the quarterback position, he's arguably the best.
he's extremely talented.
He's obviously the best, but does that translate into wins and statistic, like good statistics and wins?
I think there's 2 factions of the
It's a
Herbert.
very mixed bag.
There's a 2 conversation. You have the nerds that are like, "He's incredible," whatever, and then you have the people that are like, "What's he done? He hasn't done anything. How can I give him so much credit? He hasn't done anything." I feel like he, as a person himself, he's just kinda existing. But yeah, I'm rooting for him. I do hope gets some playoff wins under his belt so he can kinda
I
live
mean, in my opinion,
comfortably.
he's Lion Stafford,
Right, which I think was very good.
but we
You know?
weren't putting Lion Stafford like top five.
But I think that was just I think sports conversation has shifted over time. I think a lot of stock was put into just like I think a lot of stock was blindly put into winning a lot in sports, especially in football, especially in quarterbacks back in the day. You know, even Drew Brees kind of got disrespected over those times because he's throwing 5,000 yards on a Saints team that goes 7-9. You know, and I think that if those things were happening today, which we kind of see with Herbert, this is like the conversation that we have. But anyways, starting at the top 5, at 5, I have Mr. Jalen Hurts himself. In terms of skill set and actually playing the quarterback position, I don't think he would be super high on this list, but when it talks about executing and, winning plays and winning football in crunch time, he's up there with one of the best. More touchdowns than incompletions in the fourth quarter from what was it, like December on or something like that. Um, he makes they coached him in a way last year to really just kind of make the smart play, don't force anything. And then when they let him off the leash, like he said, he was able to still put up good numbers and succeed, as we saw against the Commanders, as we saw against the Chiefs, as we saw against the Steelers in the regular season. Um, so he's got it in him, and it's just for the winning formula of the Eagles. He's not required to do it. However, what I do know as a certainty is that no matter the stage that Jalen Hurts is on, no moment is too big, no stage is too bright. And I think that he will always be able to. I know for a fact that as an Eagles fan, no matter what time I'm watching Jalen Hurts play, and no matter what the game is, and no matter what it is, he's not going to be rattled. And I think that is an extremely valuable trait to have,
Well,
especially for a guy that maybe doesn't have the skill set as the guys that are ahead of him, where he can't just fall back on like elite arm talent. He has to be precise in his timing and has to be precise in his anticipation and has to be precise in when to choose his spots to go escape and whatever. And I think that those sort of things falter when you don't have, when you're those sort of things falter when the moment is too big. Those sort of things we see slip from great talented quarterbacks when the pressure's on sometimes. And when the pressure's on Jalen, he doesn't collapse. And I think that's very commendable, and that's why he's as high as he is on my list. Number 4, I have Joe Burrow. Um, Similar in terms of, building up a reputation, at least, that he is calm and collected under these pressure situations. Granted, he hasn't had many the last couple years, as the Bengals have not been as successful as a team. However, you know, watching him operate a pocket, even though, like, watching his what he said about sacks, he was like, a third down sack to me is not a big deal, other than obviously, and most of the time it isn't, other than like field goal range purposes, obviously. But more often than not, third down sacks, an incompletion or a sack, you're probably punting it anyways. And that's how he views it. So that's why his sack numbers go up a lot. But like his pressure to sack ratio on first and second down is significantly better than that on third down, because he, as a quarterback, is willing to take the third down sacks. Okay. He handles pressure well. He's very, very accurate. He does have extremely good arm talent. And for a guy that doesn't seem like is mobile, he is very smooth in the pocket. It's very, I'll say, like a little Brady-esque, where you just watching how comfortable he is in the pocket, climbing the pocket, sidestepping, and then still delivering a good throw. Very, very good. Number 3, I have the reigning MVP, perhaps fraudulent that he won it, but Josh Allen. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in football since 2020. Um, he seems to kind of get better every year. Big arm, big talent, usually plays well in the playoffs, even if they lose. It's just, you're on the wrong side of a lot of Mahomes moments. And, that's tough, but I'm not going to totally dock him for it. It's why he's a 3. Number 2, Lamar Jackson. He should have had his 3rd MVP this year, but unfortunately, he still only has his 2. He finally played like good enough to be in overtime in a playoff game against a really good team. I wouldn't say good enough to win, because he did have 2 egregious turnovers that ultimately probably cost him the game. However, I can't deny what he does in the regular season. I can't deny that even though he played poorly early in the playoff game, he wasn't able to put him in a good position later because of how well he turned up in the second half. So one of the best quarterbacks in football, one of the best quarterbacks I've ever watched. His ability running and passing is very rare, and is certainly a future Hall of Famer. And then Mahomes, it's almost like a de facto spot, even if he has a down year, even if he is, you know, like it just doesn't matter. He's relentless. He's inevitable. He makes the big plays when they matter the most, more often than he doesn't. And has still the talent and the abilities to be statistically one of the best throwing big arm, big seasons, but waiting on you know, those receivers to come around.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
dude, this quarterback quiz thing you share with me,
Why doesn't it work for you?
why doesn't it work for me?
I don't know. That's a shame.
I
Well,
literally had it. Literally
did it
had it.
refresh accidentally?
It just refreshed.
Well, John, I guess we could talk about your list next week.
Uh, I mean, I'd rather. I mean, I don't want to spend a cumulative hour of my time clicking on pictures of quarterbacks. I mean, do you still have yours pulled up?
Yeah, I still got it.
I mean, I could try to bang this out real quick.
It takes a little while, and you don't want to like start screwing it up.
No, I can. I remember what I
All right.
picked. I can just do it
Okay.
real fast.
All right.
Uh,
But yeah, you know what? Here, I'm gonna put up mine real quick. Oh, is it not up? It is not up. That's okay. But yeah, so your tiers, I have my core 4 top there, best of the best, and then I have like 5 through 9, I guess, guys that have had, success, guys that have put up big statistical years. It's a mixed bag, but they're all a bunch of quarterbacks that I think are very, very good. Um, your next group is like the situation around them definitely needs to be better for them to maybe fully ascend, but I think there's a lot of talent and pedigree that they have. Uh, that next
I'm almost
bunch
halfway
is like
through it, by
the
the way.
cool. The
Trying to make
next
sure
bunch
I
is that
don't
like
screw it up.
mid of the mid, that I has some upside, and then there's mid that does not have upside, and then there's like your hot garbage. Uh, that's the way I did it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think mine's going to be definitely be different than yours. So I do want to do it this week so we can still continue the discourse.
Okay.
Yeah. So, oh, good God. Okay.
But yeah, that website's got some pretty good lists. They have the quarterback one, they have a couple NBA ones, they have a team one, and then they recently added a wide receiver one. That one's a fun one, the
I
receiver
like the
one.
tier. I think that we do coaches. We should do the tier list because of how fugazi this site. This site looks like it's from like 1997 with the gigantic ad at the top and whatever. Um, yeah. God. Okay. If it gets a little wonky, it's because I'm kind of trying to rush through this a little bit.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
So I can I make a possible amendment to one if it looks a little off to me?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Uh,
Oh, breaking news. Bryce Harper on the 10-day IL, and that's why Otto Kemp is here.
oh wow! What a
So
shock!
hopefully,
What a
in the time
shocker!
that he is out, he plays well enough to stick around.
All right, all done. Okay, hopefully this doesn't get screwed up. Pardon my
Mhm.
whoops. This doesn't get jacked up like it did last time for me. Okay, let me know when you see my screen.
There it is.
Okay, so we'll start from the bottom. I don't know why. So Mason Rudolph shouldn't have been on here. I think it should have been Daniel Jones.
I think
Should have.
this was pre the Rodgers signing as like a what if Rodgers doesn't get signed sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Daniel Jones is going to be the starting quarterback this year for the Indianapolis Colts. So if it was more accurate, I would bump. I was rushing through. I want to put Tyler Shuck at the bottom.
Hmm.
Put Daniel Jones a spot ahead of Russell Wilson, right?
Okay.
Joe Flacco. It's really more like Joe Flacco / Kenny Pickett
Hmm.
/ Shador. I wish Shador would have been on here because Shador will
What
be.
about Dylan Gabriel? Just Dylan Gabriel, the higher draft selection's not going to be considered versus Shador.
Mm, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
whatever. We're arguing semantics. Justin Fields. We know what Justin Fields is, Michael. He is what he
Hmm.
is. Really talented. Holds on to the ball way too long.
Hmm.
Not very coachable from what we've heard, especially when Nick Foles tried to mentor him and he was just apparently just being a dickhead about it.
Hmm.
You saw how quick the Bears, once they could draft Caleb Williams, they couldn't get rid of Justin Fields fast enough.
Hmm.
Anthony Richardson, amazing talent. Um, his guys dropped a ton of passes for him last year because
Yeah.
part of it's his fault for like on checkdowns throwing like missiles where he could have probably put some more touch on the ball. Yeah, Sam. I got Sam Darnold real low, Michael. I think he's an
You think
absolute.
um
No, it's a combination of it's
it's
all
all
Kevin O'Connell
O'Connell,
and it's a combo of playing with
Justin Jefferson?
arguably the best wide receiver in professional football, where he never had that at his other places that he played.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pastronaut didn't even know the playbook, and he threw like 4 touchdowns when he had Jay Jettas. Man, like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? Like,
Right.
he's going to be so awful in Seattle. He's just going to be so terrible there because he's got washed up Cooper Kupp, and JSN's going to be double covered every play. So there you go. Michael Penix, I mean, yeah, man, like, he's got $1 million arm, but you saw it last year too, man. Like, he has no mobility,
No, he does not move well at all.
does not move well. And like, dude, you can't, unless you're playing behind like the Lions O line or the Eagles O line, like
Hmm.
you need to be able to move a little bit.
Right.
Tua, I mean, come on, man. Like he's gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Gino, I ranked low because if you look at the Raiders wide receiver room right now, Michael, it might be the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League. I feel like Gino was a bit of a product of when he was in Seattle, always having good receivers. DK
Hmm.
Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then JSN. I'm not trying to dig on him a little bit, but I feel like going to the Raiders, I mean, I feel like teams are going to be keying on Brock Bowers a little more than they
Hmm.
probably were last year because he was a rookie. I'm not saying Brock Bowers is bad. I think Brock Bowers has the potential to be easily a Hall of Fame tight end, but he's going to get double covered. The
Yeah.
Raiders have no receivers. Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward a lot. I think going to Tennessee, being on a last place schedule, Tennessee. Did you feel like Tennessee, of all the horrible teams, did you really think they were as bad as they were? Like to get the number 1 overall pick?
No, I think they had pieces that were a little more intriguing as a team. Yeah.
So I think he's going to flourish. I think he's going to have a solid rookie year. Aaron Rodgers, he can still sling it. I think in Pittsburgh, though, I mean, here's the thing, though. Arthur Smith does a really good job, Michael, of making guys who are absolutely washed. And you see where I have Russell Wilson near the bottom of my list. Russell
Hmm.
Wilson's washed. He is washed up, man.
Yeah.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as washed as Russell Wilson is. I still think he has a little
No.
bit of juice left.
Agree.
Right. Now I have JJ McCarthy 21. I'm hearing a lot of good things about McCarthy, and it's really telling of Darnold when after he was seeing more ghosts than, in the movie Ghostbusters
Hmm.
out there, that they could not wait to start JJ McCarthy. That's, to me, that's either they see something in him that we don't, and you kind of have to trust Kevin O'Connell because he's really good. I'm not saying he's going to be great, but I think he's going to be better than Darnold. He might even be higher. He might be like the Bo Nix of this year in terms of him totally outplaying his talent.
Yeah.
That's definitely a possibility. I've got Drake May at 20. I mean, Michael, I'm not really inspired by Stephon Diggs. I think Diggs is just going to suck this year. I think he's cooked. And they just suck at drafting wide receivers.
Hmm.
So I don't know how he's going to be able to succeed. I think you might see a lot of like, if Drake May had receivers, like, look at this throw. Like,
Yeah. No,
you
I
know,
agree.
you're going to see a lot of that.
Hmm.
Brock Purdy, I think it's funny we have Brock Purdy in the same spot.
That's just what he is, man. He's
He's a
just
he is
what he
he is
is.
a rat. He is
He is.
a total rat.
He is exactly what he is.
He is what he is.
Yeah.
18, Bo Nix. I think that's a good spot. I think he's just going to replicate what he did last year, which is where this tier kind of falls into.
Mhm.
Jordan Love, Jordan Mid. I mean, like at the playoff game, I said before with the Eagles Packers, I'm like, we're kind of sweating a little bit. I was like, Michael,
Yeah, but he's so mid,
he's so mid. Like
and then we
we're not losing to him. I'm like, that's not happening.
no, and then we
Like if we're
saw what we
looking at it
saw.
unbiased, it's like this guy's mid. Like
Yeah,
he's just mid.
yeah.
Like Jared Goof. Like, I mean, come on, man. I got T Law at 15. Listen, man.
We
Better,
essentially have Williams and Lawrence flipped, which I think we feel similarly for, with you being a little higher on Williams, which like is it's very respectable. I think I feel I could easily be swayed into being higher on Williams than Lawrence in like the coming months.
Stroud 14. You know, here's the concern. That O line is still
Hmm.
a complete abomination. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're Kyle Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, or Sean McVay, like a genius scheme guy. If your O line sucks, you can't out scheme a bad offensive line.
Hmm.
And, Tank Dell's like CJ Stroud's guy, He's like the Smitty of that team. Career's possibly over. I don't know, man. Nico Collins battled injuries last year. We'll see. I think he'll bounce back and still be productive. But like, I feel like with Stroud, he might be a victim of early career success, where
Yeah.
even though there's going to be circumstances that he does have control over this year, you're going to see people are going to start ragging on him. Especially, they're going to show all those clips of all the podcasts he was on when he was putting himself like top 5.
Right.
Dak Prescott 13. I think that's fair. I think Brian Schottenheimer's, I don't know why he's their head coach. He feels like a one and done guy for a bigger name down in Dallas. I don't know what exactly he does. I mean, dude, you saw how Dak was last year before he got hurt, right?
Mhm.
He didn't look good.
No, I think yeah, no.
Baker at 12, is that, I mean, do you think that's too high for Baker? He
I
led the
am not as
NFL in
high
passing last year.
I am not as high on Baker as most people are. I don't know. And I think Liam Cohen was huge for his,
Yeah,
like,
but
strides.
his new offensive coordinators from the Rams were
I
Liam
know
Cohen.
it's a Rams guy, so we'll see.
I think. Do you think because he's played well for 2 years in a row, he's just due to regress because that's just who he is?
Yeah, like I don't yeah, yeah, basically.
But they have so many weapons,
They do.
and their O line's actually pretty good.
Their line's quite good for sure.
So why can't he be good?
I don't believe in him. That's kind of I think what it comes down to. Of just like he's I just don't I refuse to think he's as good we as he's been, I guess. To do it, like you said, to do it for a third year in a row.
Both have Kyler Murray at 11.
He's good. He's quite good, but he has
He's good.
issues.
I think he's a bit frustrating when he's.
Yes, for sure.
I think of all of these guys when it comes to pressers. He is the worst by a
Mhm.
significant margin. Last year, I mean, he threw this. The schemes are shit. Like
That was funny. That was good.
well, and then now like Cliff Kingsbury is like gonna be the hot commodity next year to be a head coach again. So I
Mhm.
don't. Maybe the schemes aren't crap. I don't know. Like,
We'll
but
see.
when he was asked about like Marvin Harrison Jr., like they go out and draft MHJ last year, you know, hyped
And
up
get on the
wide
same
receiver,
page with him, like, at
and he's
all.
like, "It's not my job to get him the ball." Yes, it is your
It's,
job to get him the ball. You're the quarterback.
kinda the quarterback.
Caleb at 10. I mean, like why not?
Yeah.
Like I feel like he's a lot more coachable than people think.
Mhm.
Like he wanted to be coached last year, and they just refused to coach him.
Mhm.
That's not his fault. Ben Johnson's the opposite. I feel like I could honestly see the Bears offense putting up a lot of points. I could then also see maybe their defense regressing from last year a little
Yeah.
bit as well.
Mhm.
Um, this is probably my hottest take easily. I got Bryce Young at 9.
Listen,
I'm
I am
very
also I'm
high.
not that high on Bryce Young, but I could see it. I'm not against that at all.
Bryce Young in crunch time gave you more than what Justin Herbert gave the Chargers. And Michael, like, let's not just pretend like week 5 of the NFL season last year that we're not talking about the Carolina Panthers potentially being like the worst team ever. Let's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
not let's not pretend like that wasn't a thing. That was a thing,
No, that was discourse for sure.
right? And like you saw all the garbage that he had to work with for a second straight year.
Mhm.
Dave Canales turn it around, and I don't see why
Mhm.
Bryce Young in that division can't win 8, 9, 10 games and then be like, oh wow, Bryce Young might be like, oh, he might be like the next elite quarterback because he has the
Yeah.
talent to do it.
Yeah.
Then we got almost in the same spot, Jaden Daniels. I think that's a good spot for him. 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of agree. So Terry McLaurin walked out of Commanders camp
Mhm.
because of contractual issues.
Which is not ideal.
That is not ideal for Jaden Daniels, considering that their big offseason pickup for in terms of getting him weapons a was Debo Samuel coming off the worst year of his career, and like if Shanahan can't get anything out of him anymore, like what's like, not no offense to Cliff, but like
Yeah. No, for sure.
That's a red flag. That's a massive red flag.
Right.
Justin Herbert at 7. I mean, I was
You
giving him
stated your case previously, and listen, I think anywhere between like 5 and 7 to 8 for Herbert, I think is pretty fair.
I got our boy, Jalen
Yeah,
Hurts. I think that's fair.
totally.
Wins a lot of games, plays well in crunch time. It's got a Super Bowl ring,
Big stage shows
big
up.
stage, plays in a city where we're hypercritical.
Yeah, he handles it all with
What do you
grace.
notice about everyone ahead of him, with the exception of Stafford? Playing a football crazy, like they played a town where they're they're basically gods and they never get criticism,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of, so when I was rushing through this, I meant to put Stafford probably like fifth and then Burrow fourth. So can we just go with
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's
amendment?
fine. I'll say that's flipped. Yeah.
Amendment. I have Stafford at 5. Do I have Stafford too high? I mean, here we're doing it for 2025.
Dude,
Uh,
Stafford's still really good, man. I
dude,
think that's
did you look, dude? Devonte Adams had 1,000 yard season last year. He took half the year off.
yeah, him and Puka could be scary out there for
That's
sure.
really scary. Like it could
Mhm.
might be better than AJ and Devonte
Ah,
Smith. Dude, I'm
yeah.
just saying.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
That's like that. It's like the three best receiver duos are Higgins and Jamar Chase,
Mhm.
Puka and Devonte Adams. If Devonte Adams is still the Devonte Adams of like the last couple years, and then AJ and Smitty.
Yeah.
Like that's like they're very close if we're
Mhm.
ranking them. So yeah, man. Joe Burrow. Kind of feel bad for him, man.
Yeah, some bad Bengal teams.
Do you think though he's overrated a little bit when people
Oh, for
talk about him?
sure.
You
I
think
think
he's
I think his
overrated?
Super Bowl run is overrated. Like, I think that was very defense oriented. A lot of people forget that he threw what should have been like a game losing interception basically in the divisional round. Yeah. And
What
then
about the year after when they played the Chiefs and the Chiefs got bailed out on that stupid?
no, I mean the guy pushed him out of bounds. Like it was a penalty. Like I don't know.
I mean, I'm not saying it should have been a penalty. It's just a really, it's sort of like,
I don't
you
think
know,
anyone flinches if they lose in the previous year. If they got bounced by the Titans or, the defense didn't hold Mahomes and the Chiefs to 3 points in the second half when they went to the Super Bowl. Like, that was a very defense first Bengals team that has so quickly fallen from grace to they have no defense. But yeah, Burrow's still very good.
mm. So got Lamar at 3. I was kind of struggling with how to rank these three here.
Yeah, they're hard to they're hard.
I feel like with Lamar, if Mark Andrews just decided not to have if he like wiped away 8 years of like being a really good tight end in like one horrible playoff game,
Hmm.
Lamar would have caught so much crap for that playoff loss against the
Yeah,
Bills.
yeah.
And we've seen him have a lot of playoff failures. And, I'm not going to be honest. I think Bateman and Flowers is a good receiver combo. He didn't have Flowers in that game against the Bills, and you could really tell it hurt them.
Hmm.
And that's all John Harbaugh's fault for being a moron playing him in a meaningless game
Yep,
where he got injured.
yep.
I don't know, man. This run that Lamar's on, I mean, is he going to have another straight year of it? I mean, probably. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe a little less.
yeah.
My concern though is his health because last year was like his first year where he didn't really have any kind of injury he had to really battle through. Where the
Hmm.
year, or even the year before when his MVP year, like, he was banged up a little bit. That's why I was the MVP. Battled through injuries and helped them win a ton of games.
Mm-hmm.
Mahomes at 2.
Mahomes at 2.
Mahomes at 2. Do you feel like some of his aura got stripped away a little bit this past year because of, mediocre O line, guys were hurt, Kelsey regression?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you feel like because he doesn't have the other factors to like cover up some of his flaws that he could drop off, like the turnovers, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know. I think that if they have Rashee Rice for a full season, I think that does a lot um, to help out the offense. Because if they don't, it could get scary with the weapons that they have out there. Lack
And then I,
thereof, I should
then I
say.
have Josh Allen at number 1. I think I put him at number 1 because I like to joke that Josh Allen has 7 number 3 wide receivers,
Mm-hmm.
and he does a lot with not really having a whole lot in the passing game. Like
Mm-hmm.
Dalton Kincaid, I don't want to say he's a disappointment. Maybe he is a bit of a disappointment. Everyone thought he was going to be like this elite tight end when they
No,
picked him.
people talked about Kincaid like he was going to be like Bowers.
Right, and he's not.
No,
So, and he's got James Cook. I love James Cook, man. Big fan of James
dealing with
Cook.
contract issues. Yeah,
But they don't want to pay him.
yeah.
They don't want to pay him. So
But anyways, very respectable lists that we put together for sure.
I agree. And all right, everybody, that's it for the show. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We're going to be kind of doing these ranking lists for the month of June, and then we're going to break down the divisions in July and August for each show. So we'll be looking forward to that. Thank you for tuning in. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Phillies Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.